Hello, 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 the mask is back, and we are with a very mid card, even worse than mid, I'd say. It's like a 3 out of 10. Honestly, the bout order is terrible. The fights themselves could be so much better. Um, the matchups themselves, like even in the weight classes themselves, other opponents can be fighting each other and it would make more sense. Like right here, Ignacio versus a Terrence or Kyle Nelson makes a lot more sense than a Tafik who literally debuted with a loss against Mittebek Oralby, and even Chase Hooper and Lance Gibson. Like those three fights can have totally different matchups. I would do Lance Gibson versus Tafik Musafayev, but that's besides the point. At this point, uh, I mean the main event's pretty good, so that's all that matters, I suppose. And it's right around the corner, so might as well just enjoy what we have here. So Bruno Brazil, Alexia Theanara, and yeah, I think that Bruno Brazil, she just feints a lot at range and she doesn't do a whole lot. She has an alright calf kick, an alright jab, and an alright hook. That's basically the extent of her game, and sometimes she can work a jiu-jitsu game if you're freaking Molly McCann. Otherwise, she's probably going to lose to Alexa Theranara based on her much superior ground game, and she actually can work submissions based on the fact that her two of her last five wins were by submission. And against Molly McCann, in all fairness, but Bruno Brazil went to a 30-27 decision, so that's not all that good in comparison to Alexa Theanara's win over her. So I could honestly see a submission here. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'll go with the decision 30-27 from Alexa Theanara. She's a huge favorite, so I would not be surprised with a submission. Ricky Simone versus Adrian Yanez. This is a really hard fight to predict. I'm going to lean Yanez because even though his calf kick defense is certainly something to be worried about here, I think he's always shown really good takedown defense, Yanez. And I think that Ricky Simone, to work his boxing, he's going to have to mix in the grappling. He did not look that good against a Vinicius Oliveira, who was mainly just able to sort of brute force his way through a lot of the strikes that Ricky Simone was offering. And when he was fighting against someone who had more attributes, and I understand that Adrian Yanez has about the same attributes, but when he did fight someone who was a taller, longer guy, and who was actually competent in the striking in Vinicius Oliveira compared to a guy that Ricky Simone can knock out, like I think Farid Basharat, or it might have been Javid. Oh, it was Javid. Either way, if you're fighting against someone who's actually very competent in the striking and comfortable, who can put the jab onto you and then work the body shots from there, he has some really good hooks that he landed against. I understand that these wins that he's had in the past, Adrian Yanez, has been aging not too great, but and even in those fights he's been struggling. But what we do have to consider is he does when he does have momentum, he does pile it on. And even in these fights that he's losing, I understand the Rob Font loss isn't great, but let's be honest, so is the Vinicius Oliveira loss for Ricky Simone. It really wasn't, and it really wasn't a good one. And I do think that Adrian Yanez, his only worry here is getting put up against the fence and being stalled out, because that is something that against Daniel Marcos he was having some hard times with, but he was even finding the hands and getting away from that for the most part pretty well. And this is definitely one of the most interesting fights on the card. So it's tough. I could definitely see it going either way, but I'm going to say split decision, Adrian Yanez. I think he's going to land some decent hooks to the body and to the head, some decent jabs to set that up. And I think that Ricky Simone is mainly going to be relying on the 1-2, and sometimes he's just going to miss because Adrian Yanez has some decent head movement. And the leg kicks aren't going to be good enough. They're not going to be strong enough. They're not going to be landing like a Martinez. I think that's the name. Yeah, it's not going to be landing like a Martinez. He just has some elite leg kicks, so yeah. Bruno Lopez, Navajo Sterling, pretty obvious Navajo Sterling first round KO. I'm going to go with. The difference here is Bruno Lopez leaves himself way more open defensively. He kind of leaves his hands to the chest sometimes, even though he does have some big forearms and just and hands in general. He can block efficiently. He just doesn't. He just leaves his hands fairly low. And I understand that the odds are slightly lower because Navajo Sterling is going to more decisions, and Bruno Lopez, he was looking quite proven going into the UFC. However, after this brutal KO that he had against a Dustin Jacoby in what was probably one of the worst KOs of Dustin Jacoby's career for the opponent, I think that it's also the fact that Dustin Jacoby, even though he's usually known for the knockout, he doesn't slump people out like he did against Bruno Lopez. If I'm remembering right, he did fight quite a few Brazilians in recent times, though I could be forgetting the exact KO here, but I'm pretty sure he had the one of the more brutal ones. And even in his contender series fight, I think it was he also got slept, or maybe it was just before the contender series fight. So he's not really known for a good chin, and he has some alright hooks. He has he has some decent boxing, but I don't know too much about him. And last time I knew he got brutally starched by Dustin Jacoby. My gosh, what is that? And Navajo Sterling, on the other hand, I think he's gonna pierce through the guard if it ever comes up, and I think he's actually gonna drop him with a jab because Navajo Sterling, I think he's getting more experience in the UFC, and I think he'll find the shot. Casey O'Neill and Gabriel Fernandez. I'm going with Gabriel Fernandez. I honestly couldn't care less. Casey O'Neill has been inactive. Gabriel Fernandez has some decent wins against some decent prospects, especially the Kong Wang win is aging beautifully. Granted, that was kind of fluky, but Casey O'Neill, I mean, she just kind of does what she does. I honestly don't even know how to describe her style. They're both kind of I guess I can't say really mid for WMMA, but they're both kind of whatever. I don't know too much about their styles. Gabriel Fernandez has a decent head kick, I guess, and some she has some decent kicks and some decent jiu-jitsu, so I'll go with her. Casey O'Neill is kind of a floating around at range NPC type of fighter. I'm gonna go with Terrell Fortune here because Marcin Tabura, honestly, in hindsight, the Ante Delija loss isn't that good. I hate to say that because I love Ante Delija, but I just gotta be honest. Antadelia, he kind of just relies on exploding at you from range and just hoping that the shots land sometimes. Terrell Fortune, I mean, he does have some pretty accurate shots, but not accurate enough for me to say that it's that impressive of a win at this point in his career. Marcin Tabura, he's been looking slower, he's been looking tubbier, he's 40 years old. Terrell Fortune, I don't know anything about him, but I know that Marcin Tabura is looking worse and worse. And let's be honest, Mick Parkin, he's kind of one of those floating around at range, just jabbing and throwing out some sloppy, body kicks type of fighter. And he had a arguable robbery loss to Marcin Tabura. So Marcin Tabura, his best win in recent times is like, I guess Mick or Marcin Tabura. I mean not Marcin. Tai Tuivasa. Like these are not that great wins, and Terrell actually looks like he's in shape. That's what I'm basing heavyweight wins off of now. Chase Hooper, Lance Gibson. I was considering Lance Gibson, but then I realized watching back the Chase Hooper win against Jim Miller and Lance Gibson's loss against Bobby Green. It's a very similar stylistical matchup for both the guys where Chase Hooper is going to be landing the teeps. He's going to be trying landing some straight punches, some counter hooks perhaps. And Lance Gibson, on the other hand, he's just going to be trying working his way into the pocket, landing some quick hooks and some other stuff in between on the guards. But the difference is Chase Hooper has that ground game that he can work. And Bobby Green, it was super short notice. He had no idea what to game plan for with Lance Gibson. And probably nobody did because he was new and green in the UFC. So I'm going to say decision, actually. I could see a submission. I don't know. I don't know. I think that Lance Gibson's much better on the feet. We just don't know. I mean, not much better, but I think he will be better on the feet. It's just that Chase Hooper will work his ground game, and his takedowns look kind of sloppy for me, so I think he's going to struggle on the feet a bit, and Lance Gibson is going to have the takedown defense enough. It's just that we don't know his takedown defense, but I think he's going to be good enough to make it to a decision. Ignacio Bahamondes and Tafik Musafayev. I mean, come on. This should be a first round starching from Ignacio Bahamondes. Maybe I'll say round two because Tafik maybe has a good chin, but from what we know, he has zero grappling offensively. Defensively at least. And I know that was Mitubek Orlbai, but he got completely destroyed in that matchup. And Mitubek is good, but Ignacio also has some decent jiu-jitsu. We saw that against Jalen Turner. We saw that against other opponents. He does have some very long limbs, which he could work on his opponent for the jiu-jitsu. Defensively, I mean, I don't like how he gets taken down sometimes, even against Jalen Turner and against Rafael Fiziev. That's certainly something that's worrying. So I can't see him getting taken down in the first round, but in the second round, I could see him planting a beautiful cross on the chin of Tafik, or even on the temple. And Terrence McKinney, Kyle Nelson. I'm going with Terrence McKinney. I mean, Kyle Nelson, even when he's winning, he just looks kind of weird out there. He just looks kind of awkward. He's like flailing overhands that somehow land on his opponent. Freaking Matt Favola just looks so washed these days. I don't know. He just kind of relies on these weird Superman punches with very bad timing. And if you just duck under his punches, he just has a very rough time landing. Terrence McKinney, I think he can land. I think he has a few more tools than a Matt Frevola. I think he has an uppercut. I think he has some other straight punches. I think he's more quick than a Matt Frevola. So yeah, I'm gonna lean towards Terrence McKinney here. I think that Kyle Nelson, he leaves himself too open. Mansour Abdulmalik and Yusuri Blagori. Mansour Abdulmalik is trash. I'm gonna be honest. I think he's the most overhyped prospect in possibly like the last 5 years of UFC history. It can be debated for sure. Like what's the guy's name? Umar Sy is another one of those. There's some others, but I'm gonna say that honestly, for what people were expecting Umar to do to Marab, I would say that Umar is another one of those, and he's constantly getting these super high odds, like minus 1600, and then meanwhile he just thinks it up to a 30-27, which is good, but he has these minimal striking output exchanges where he's just relying on countering on the back foot and sometimes getting some decent control time. With that being said, Yusuri Bilgori, he has amazing striking. His long and rangy strikes are so good. I love his cross. I love his hooks. Even uppercuts are going to work well in this matchup. And I think that he's going to utilize his reach much better than Mansour Abdul Malik does. Because even though he has insanely long arms, you can just see it in his UFC profile. Just in his like profile picture there. It's just a matter of who uses it better. And I don't think that he plants his jab very well. I don't think that he I don't know. He's just kind of like a better Cody Brundage. He's just like Cody Brundage with attributes. That's really all Mansour is. So he'll probably land some takedowns, but I'm gonna say a round 3 TKO for Yuzuru Bugori. And even some knees he could land. This guy, Douglas, I have no idea what he does, but I know that Julian Olarosa is the definition of mid. I think he's going to land an uppercut and KO Julian Olarosa. He's looking sloppier. He's looking slower. He Julian Olarosa, it's just like, what? Whatever. I don't know. It's like that meme. What does he even do? And the same thing with Nico Price. Like at this point in his career, what does he even do? Michael Chiesa is gonna land some awkward jabs on him. He's gonna land some awkward jabs to the body. He has that weird karate stance, sort of like he has that crab stance like Anderson Gibb. If you guys, if anyone knows him from the freaking YouTube boxing, if you're not Unk, if you remember that freaking whole YouTube boxing era, that abomination. He kind of fights like that on the feet, Michael Chiesa. So I think he's gonna, and that's somehow gonna work here because Nico Price, like again, what does he even do on the feet anymore? He just swings hooks, I guess. I guess. And then Michael Chiesa is gonna land a beautiful double leg, and he's gonna work his way to the back, similar to Tony Ferguson. First round submission for Chiesa, easy. I'm actually going to go with Alexa Grasso here. I think this is a decent underdog. I think that even though I think people expect that Macy Barber, and she does look more built for the division now, certainly. And I think that they're going to expect that here, just imposing her will, physicality maxing in the second and third rounds probably. But Alexa Grasso, I think that she has really good counters when she's actually able to let it go. I think that if you're just floating around at range, which she was doing in the first fight, Macy Barber, what we see in the earlier fights of Shevchenko's against Alexa Grasso is she was getting tagged against Alexa Grasso when she was. I mean, sometimes she had moments in the pocket, but Alexa Grasso is very lethal in the pocket when she's not going up against someone who is very hard to track, hard to catch in Natalia Silva, and who's able to fight on the back foot like that, sort of utilize her kicks, and then just utilize her speed maxing, speed mogging, to just find the quicker hooks in the pocket. But Alexa Grasso is not going up against someone like that. She is going up against someone who relies on these clinches, these clinch exchanges, just being rough out there, just swinging these wild hooks. She's not as fast as Natalia Silva, so she can't do that as well. And overall, I think that Macy Barber, though physically imposing and probably more pop behind her shots, I think that Alexa Grasso has much better timing. She has a really good 1-2. She has really good hooks. And I think that even the uppercut's going to be there sometimes. I think that the leg kicks, especially, are underrated from Grasso. They're a good range finding tool for her. And so I think 29-28 for Grasso, maybe even split decision. I think that Barber's certainly gotten better, but I also don't like that the weight cut's getting harder for her because of that physicality advantage that she will have and always has had since, I guess, 2022, 2023 maybe, since leaving that Apex era. I think that she is like we've seen her have to pull out. She's like vomited before in her last pullout, I believe. So it's a problem for her this weight cut, and I do think that it's gonna show in this fight where she's just slower. She's more predictable. And Joe Pyfer, Israel Adesanya. I mean, come on. Do we even need to? Do I even need to like Israel Adesanya is gonna destroy this fool. Honestly, like round three TKO, I'm gonna say. Joe Pyfer, he in hindsight he looked terrible against um the African guy. What's the guy's name? I don't think he's even there. Uh, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, I think that's the guy. Yeah, he looked terrible against him with the leg kicks defense. He has no leg kicks defense. He doesn't know how to check leg kicks. He has a really good right overhand, right cross if it lands. But otherwise, he doesn't have it. He just spends most of the fight just setting up that one tool, and if he doesn't land it, then he's just okay with just landing one jab, one leg kick, one hook on the guard. He's like very low output. Sometimes if he backs you up against the fence, he'll actually let his hands go and do like a jab, then to a right hook on the guard, and then a hook to the body. But it's nothing like Ilya Topuria, for example, where his whole game is similar to Ilya Topuria's, but he just can't keep going when he has you backed up against the fence. He just doesn't try enough. And Israel Adesanya, like he's just trying to set up the perfect shot. And Israel Adesanya, meanwhile, he's going to be landing 5 times more leg kicks than a Jack Hermanson did, who did figure him out to a 48-47 decision, who isn't as long, who isn't as tall, who doesn't have the reach advantage as much, who isn't as chinny. Israel Adesanya, even though he is more chinny at this point in his career, he's certainly not as chinny as Jack Hermanson was at that point in his career. And Israel Adesanya, he does have a just more fast twitch jab. He has a more fast twitch counter. Even though he is certainly less good with the counters than what people overhype him as, he does have the counters. And even if it goes to the takedowns, I do think that it's going to be a similar degree of success that a Nasruddin Umavov had, where he was getting pushed up against the fence, Israel Adesanya, but he was still able to find the underhooks and sort of lift him off him. Israel Adesanya, he can reverse. He can. Joe Pyfer might be stronger than Nasruddin, but I think it's going to be a very minimal difference. I think it's going to be very slight. And overall, I do think that Joe Pyfer will land early in the fight. He will land in probably the first round. The second round is going to be insanely hard for him to bomb that right hand. He can even drop Israel Adesanya, but it's going to be a flash knockdown. He's going to get back to landing those leg kicks. And I think that Joe Pyfer is going to be like a sitting duck out there once he gets those leg kicks chewed on him. Because Jack Hermanson did it, the freaking 12-8 record opponent, I think, in Abdul Razak Al Hassan was finding those leg kicks, 2 hard leg kicks, and Joe Pyfer immediately went for the shot, and luckily he got it, which shows how strong he is if he's actually feeling threatened enough to go for those double legs. But on the other hand, it also shows that he's vulnerable, and Israel Adesanya is very, um, he's very aware when you shoot a sloppy takedown, or if you shoot in general. When you shoot, you're probably worried about what's coming back at you. And then he goes right back at it when he stuffs the takedowns. Usually he does, and he gets right back after it. So I think that he's just going to be pressuring Joe Pyfer in the third round because Joe Pyfer is not going to have any good offerings. Maybe he'll counter Israel Adesanya similar to Alex Pereira did. I mean, similar to how Israel Adesanya did to Alex Pereira in the second fight when Israel Adesanya feels comfortable backing him up against the fence. However, the difference is Joe Pyfer is going to be more stationary and he's going to have his leg a little more chewed up. It's kind of similar to that. Perhaps I could see Israel Adesanya getting counter in that regard, but Joe Pyfer, he's way too predictable. He's not like a elite kickboxer like an Israel Adesanya or an Alex Pereira. So I just don't see him timing that counter hook as much as an Israel Adesanya did against a Alex Pereira. So yeah, obviously, I mean, he could land it. Joe Pyfer has insane power. He has a okay leg kick, I suppose, and he has a really good takedown, and he's even working his jiu-jitsu, as we saw against Abu Magomedov. But overall, I just think that he doesn't mix it up well enough. I think his backhand is mainly what he works on. He has an okay jab, to be honest, but it's nothing like Israel Adesanya's jab. He's going to be popping the jab at Joe Pyfer, keep him backed up. It's going to be similar to DDP, except Joe Pyfer isn't going to have enough tools of a DDP. He's not going to have the wide range of kicks that DDP does. He's not going to have the grit that DDP does. So yeah, I'm going to say he just plants a beautiful cross on Joe Pyfer, and it's going to be kind of sort of similar to the Paul Costa fight, even though it was a hook that actually put Costa away. and it's going to be something where he's just kind of stationary at that point because and Joe Pyfer makes a silly just winging overhand in the pocket at some point when he's backed up against the fence. So round 3 TKO. Thank you so much for watching Mask of MMA. Out.